notes, so this is fine. All right, the New York Times article, it's called "We Can Bury Anyone Inside a Hollywood Smear Campaign." Oh, sorry, Smear Machine by Megan Twohey, Mike McIntyre, and Julie Tate. And this sets the stage. Oh, let me make sure this is on. Huh, okay. I guess this was an article. This sets the stage for an alleged campaign to tarnish Blake Lively's reputation after her misconduct allegations against Justin Baldoni. Last summer, as the release of It Ends With Us approached, Justin Baldoni, the director and a star of the film, and Jamie Heath, the lead producer, hired crisis public relations experts during the shooting. Blake Lively, the co-star, had complained that the men had repeatedly violated physical boundaries and made sexual and other inappropriate comments to her. Their studio, Wayfair, agreed to provide a full-time intimacy coordinator, bring in an outside producer, and put other safeguards on set. In a side letter to Miss Lively's contract signed by Mr. Heath, the studio also agreed not to retaliate against the actress. All right, that is the first paragraph. The New York Times' favorite trick is implication over information. This one is a classic. The New York Times doesn't have to outright say Baldoni and Heath are guilty. They just have to imply it. And they do it masterfully in a few sentences. Last summer, as the release of It Ends With Us approached, Justin Baldoni and director, star of the film, Jamie Heath, lead producer, hired a crisis public relations expert. Okay, let's tear into that. First trick, drop crisis PR in the first sentence to make them look shady right from the jump. What they don't tell you is that every major studio and public figure pretty much hires crisis PR in Hollywood, especially if they're dealing with any type of potential litigation or anything where you're like, hey, my spidey senses tell me that something might go down. Like, let's prepare for this. And that's not a gotcha moment. That's called having a career in Hollywood. But the New York Times frames it like Baldoni and Heath were panicking over some bombshell allegations. Then we get this. During the shooting, Blake Lively, the co-star, had complained that the co-star had complained that the men had repeatedly violated physical boundaries and made sexual and other inappropriate comments to her. Okay. Notice anything? No specifics. What boundaries? What comments? They don't say. There's no proof. They don't cite receipts. Just that Lively said it happened. Okay, she complained. No nuance. Baldoni and Heath's side? Oh, don't worry about all that. And this is the part that kills me. Their studio, Wayfair, agreed to provide a full-time intimacy coordinator, bring in an outside producer, and put other safeguards on set. You see how slick that is? If you're just a regular person reading this at home, I'm like, am I still alive? Yeah, you see how slick that is? If you're just a regular person reading this at home, your brain automatically assumes that Baldoni and co. were forced to make these changes because of inappropriate behavior. But that's not necessarily true. What does the New York Times not tell you? Well, what they don't tell you is that intimacy quarters, they're completely standard in Hollywood. Baldoni already had one from the start. These safeguards were not just some punishment. They were business as usual, but they leave all of that out. You see how they framed it? They make it seem like the intimacy coordinator was hired after the complaints were made, because they know the average person reading this does not work in Hollywood. So they let the reader assume the worst. And that's the dirty trick. They don't have to prove anything. They just have to suggest it and let the public run wild. And the best part, if Baldoni, if Baldoni sues them over this paragraph, they can just turn around and say, we never said he did anything. We just said that Lively complained about it. You get it? This is how the media plays this game. So let's get to the next paragraph. But by August, the two men who had positioned themselves as feminist allies in the Me Too era expressed fears that her allegations would become public and taint them, according to a legal complaint that she filed. According to the legal complaint. You see that? Not according to the New York Times, according to the complaint that she filed on Friday, right? Like, oh yeah, we just got our hands on it. No, they were, who knows? If I had to guess, they were coordinating with Lively's team far before the article dropped, even before the metadata evidence that has come out, I would guess. It claims that their PR effort had an explicit goal. This is Lively's complaint. This is what New York Times is saying. It claims that their PR effort had an explicit goal to harm Miss Lively's reputation instead. Oh, this is a classic New York Times move. Set up a contradiction that doesn't actually exist and let the audience fill in the blanks with suspicion. They don't have to outright say Baldoni is a fraud or Ariadna is a liar. They just have to imply it and let the court of public opinion do the rest. So let's break that down. New York Times says Baldoni and Heath branded themselves as feminist allies, but then gasp, they were worried about being accused of misconduct. What's the implication here? That if you publicly support women, you shouldn't fear false allegations? That if you believe in #MeToo, you must be guilty if someone accuses. That if you believe in #MeToo, you must be guilty if someone accuses you. That's insane. You can believe in protecting women and also not want your entire career torched by a baseless article, right? Both things can be true, but New York Times doesn't want you to think critically. They just want you to eat it all up, whatever they're dishing out. They want to plant the seed, plant the idea that Baldoni was performatively feminist until it didn't serve him. And that's exactly how they framed Me Too. Speaking of Me Too, #MeToo. Oh man, I'm so glad we fixed that. And thank you guys for hanging around. Sorry for I'll make it up to you guys, I swear. By the way, you guys like my new sweatshirt? These are going to be available soon on the website. Okay. Anyway, this is exactly how they framed me. They painted me as someone who claimed to want to help young creators. But then, there were claims that I was a bad manager. That's it. That's the whole setup. They didn't prove anything. They just made it sound like my entire mission was suspect, just like they're doing with Baldoni. Now let's compare their playbook side by side. On Baldoni, he presented himself as a feminist ally, but was afraid of false allegations. Suspicious. On me, she said she wanted to help young creators, but some creators claimed she was exploitative. Suspicious. You see how they do it? They take whatever you say, you stand for, and make it sound like a convenient cover for whatever their anonymous sources say you did. And the best part, they never have to prove a thing. They just set the stage so you look like a hypocrite. Now let's talk about the real contradiction here. New York Times paints Baldoni's concerns about false allegations as some kind of secret admission of guilt. But last I checked, the New York Times literally has an entire department dedicated to avoiding defamation lawsuits. By their own logic, if Baldoni was guilty for protecting himself, then what does that say about the New York Times covering its own ass every time they write a hit piece? The truth is that when you go up against a machine like the New York Times, they don't just challenge your side of the story, they challenge your right to have a side at all. And they do it in a way that makes sure the public will never give you the benefit of the doubt, because in their world, the accused is always guilty. Are you guys feeling me so far? What do you guys think? Am I on the money here? Well, here's the thing. We're on to this playbook now, and we're not buying it. Next paragraph. Her filing includes experts from thousands of pages of text messages and emails that she obtained through a subpoena. Listen to that right there. That she obtained through a subpoena. These and other documents were reviewed by the New York Times. Vague sourcing. BS. That should trigger your little BS-o-meter. Here's the other trick. They hide behind weasel words. New York Times says, according to the complaint, and thousands of texts. We reviewed thousands of texts. But whose texts? Baldoni's? The interns? They won't say. Why? Because they're journo-splaining. They throw big, scary numbers at you, words that sound official, hoping you won't ask for receipts. This is a tactic. Just remember that part. They don't tell you. So you're reading the article. You're just a regular person. You're reading the article, and they're like, how do we know all this happened? Because we know this happened because we have thousands of messages, right? They're like, they obtained thousands of text messages by subpoena. What does that make you? What do you think that makes you think if you don't know anything about the story? It makes you think that they got Justin Baldoni's messages subpoenaed. They think that Justin Baldoni had to turn in his messages. That's what I thought at first until I read it in plain English. It doesn't say that. It just says that there was a subpoena, but it doesn't say like who did they subpoena, what did they get, like nothing. No, you don't need to know that. No, not important. Okay. The smear campaign playbook revealed. There have long been figures behind the scenes. There have long been figures behind the scenes shaping public opinion about celebrities. Through gossip columns, tabloids, and strategic interviews. The documents show an additional playbook for waging a largely undetectable smear campaign in the digital era. Oh, New York Times. They're just getting real down and dirty. They can't wait to learn about how these smear campaigns work. Don't pay no attention to the fact that they invented them, right? This is rich coming from the New York Times, the publication that has made an art form out of destroying reputations on behalf of cry bullies with power. They invented the modern smear campaign and wielded it against me and plenty of people, men like Baldoni, sure, but also women. Yes, me. And let's be real, many, many others. They don't just report on smear campaigns, they run them. But here they are. Really blowing the lid off this one. The bury her texts, right? So this is a New York Times article. He wants to feel like she can be buried. A publicist working with the studio and Mr. Baldoni wrote in an August 2nd message to the crisis management expert, Melissa Nathan. You know, we can bury anyone, Miss Nathan wrote. So in the beginning of the article, they hit you with her filing, includes experts from thousands of pages of text messages and emails that she obtained through a subpoena. And these other documents were reviewed by the New York Times. And what does that sound like? That they have direct texts from Baldoni and Heath saying all these shady things, and that the New York Times big fat legal team reviewed them. So of course it's practically confirmed. You know, by the journalism gods themselves. right? That's the reaction they want you to have. But let's talk about what they don't tell you. The only messages they actually have from Baldoni and Heath are the ones from group chats where PR people were present. The rest, those so called bombshell texts, those are from a separate PR group chat where Baldoni and Heath weren't even in it. And guess what? The New York Times doesn't make any effort to clarify which messages came from where. Why? Because that would ruin the illusion, guys. Take the bury her text. Okay. This is a good example. The way the New York Times presents it, it sounds like Baldoni himself was plotting in real time to destroy Blake Lively. But when you actually look at the messages, you realize he wasn't even in that conversation. It was PR people talking amongst themselves, probably half sarcastic, probably just venting about their job while still getting paid to clean up Lively's PR mess, right? And the cherry on top is a huge chunk of these messages are just PR people celebrating the fact that the public was already running with the anti-Lively narrative on their own, meaning a lot of this so-called orchestrated smear campaign was just Lively's own bad press working against her. While her own messy interviews gave the internet all the fuel it needed. But does the New York Times explain that context? Nope, because this isn't an article about informing you. It's about framing the narrative that they want you to believe. All right, next, PR offensive and media manipulation tactics. In the following weeks, this is the New York Times. I don't know if I have to do my New York Times voice versus my voice. I wish I could play little clown music when the New York Times article. I mean, I probably could, but I'm just not going to mess with my technology today because it's been one of those days. In the following weeks, Miss Nathan, whose clients have included Johnny Depp and the rappers Drake and Travis Scott, went hard at the press, pushing to prevent stories about Mr. Baldoni's behavior and reinforce negative ones about Miss Lively. What does that mean? Reinforced. Okay. Anyway, put a note there. Miss Lively, the text messages show behavior and reinforce negative ones about Miss Lively. The text messages show. Again, there they obfuscate their responsibility by saying, well, the text messages show this. We're just reporting on the text messages that already exist. I already know how they're going to get out of this lawsuit, guys. It's just how they do it. This is classic New York Times playbook, okay? Oh, wait, did I read the whole thing? Oh, yeah, here we go. The text messages show Jed Wallace, a self-described hired gun, led a digital strategy that included boosting social media posts that could help their cause. Boosting social media posts that could help their cause. Is this illegal to boost a post? I mean, I don't know. I boost my posts sometimes. How do we boost them? You boost them sometimes, your friends on the internet, they retweet you. You get boosted, maybe you got some press in the media. Everybody boosts stuff that helps their cause. What are you talking about, New York Times? How is this malicious? Sounds malicious, doesn't it? This is classic New York Times playbook. Guilt by association. They still haven't detailed what Baldoni actually did to make Lively uncomfortable. Because let's be real, if they had something genuinely damning, it would have been right up top, right up front and center. Instead, they're deep into the article, already moving past proving guilt and straight into the juicy part, the smear campaign. And how do they make it sound extra nefarious? By throwing in some very scary names. Melissa Nathan, whose clients have included Johnny Depp, Drake, and Travis Scott. The goal here is obvious, you see. These are the kind of people Baldoni's team hires. I'm saying that's what New York Times is saying. They're like, see, these are the kind of people that Baldoni's team hires. Because if someone has worked with controversial figures before, obviously that makes them shady, right? Never mind the fact that crisis PR firms work with literally everyone in Hollywood. And Blake Lively's PR gal, she was funded by Harvey Weinstein. But they didn't want to talk about that. Let's just put that aside. Let's not talk about that. Should we put that in? Nah, no. I can't believe that there's not one person on this editing team hey guys, don't you think that maybe we should like say something about this? No, nobody wants to speak up against, Megan Twohey from the New York Times, as she has a Pulitzer Prize for the Me Too movement. Who would dare? Who would dare say, hold on a second, guys, are we sure we want to do this? The goal here is obviously these are the kind of people Baldoni's team hires, because if someone has worked with these controversial figures before, obviously that makes them shady. Then they drop Jed Wallace, a self-described hired gun, led a digital strategy that included boosting social media posts that could help their cause. First of all, self-described hired gun. What is this, a Tarantino movie? They're literally just branding him like some kind of rogue mercenary. In reality, digital strategy is what PR firms do, boosting positive press, making sure your client's side of the story is visible, countering negative narratives. That's not a smear campaign. That's reputation management. And meanwhile, the New York Times has spent zero time explaining the actual substance of Lively's complaint because they don't have to. They've already decided Baldoni's guilty, so now the story isn't about proving his wrongdoing. It's about how he tried to cover it up. You see? Excuse me while I go throw up real quick. All right, back to New York Times. An attorney for Wayfair said in a statement to the Times that the studio executives and public relations representatives did nothing proactive nor retaliated against Miss Lively, and accused the actress of another desperate attempt to fix her negative reputation. These claims are completely false, outrageous, and intentionally salacious, with an intent to publicly hurt and rehash a narrative in the media, the lawyer Brian Friedman wrote. Yes, the look, we were fair section. This is a standard New York Times move. Bury the denial, quote, deep in the article after pages of framing Baldoni, or in my case, me, as some PR obsessed villain. That's how they frame Baldoni. So that by the time you read it, your brain is already trained to dismiss it as damage control. This isn't included to actually provide balance. It's included so they can later say, see, we gave him a chance to respond. Right? So here's how they do this. Step 1, frame the quote as predictable. They make sure to place the statement after they've spent paragraphs laying out their case against Baldoni. That way, when Friedman, his lawyer, responds with, these claims are completely false, outrageous, and intentionally salacious, it sounds like exactly what a guilty person's lawyer would say. You see, this is a psychological trick. At this point, the audience has already bought that the New York Times, at this point, the audience has already bought the New York Times version of events. So any denial just reads as PR spin. Step 2, use a fairness buffer. Notice how they sandwich Friedman's statement between more framing. Right before they quote, they remind you, another desperate attempt to fix her negative reputation. Translation, before we let Baldoni's team speak, just remember Lively's the real victim here. It's the same move they pulled on me. Miss Jacob has conducted herself with the utmost professionalism and courage. That's what my lawyer said. Oh, okay. So she's just going to say that she's great and that the people accusing her are cowards. Of course, she would say that. It's subtle, but it primes the audience to dismiss the response before they even read it. And step 3, weaponizing typos and technicalities. Now, this part really gets me. When my lawyer, Ben Walter, pulled an all-nighter responding to their questions, we had like very little time to respond as well. He accidentally misworded a sentence. This is what he wrote in an email to the New York Times. They quoted him. He said, these individuals attacking her don't want to play by the rules of decent individuals in society, but want to attack Miss Jacob publicly from the shadows. It was obviously meant to say publicly and from the shadows. One typo. That's all it took. New York Times ran with it, turning it into some weird contradiction, like, oh, how can you attack someone publicly from the shadows? That doesn't make sense. They knew what he meant. There were people attacking me publicly and people doing it behind the scenes, like the influencers who send dirt to the New York Times but wouldn't go on record because they knew they'd look shady and breach their contracts and likely get sued. But instead of clarifying that, they used a single typo to discredit my entire lawyer's response. I agree. I guarantee you, if Baldoni's lawyer had made a small mistake in his statement, the New York Times would have done the exact same thing. So, what's the final takeaway on this? The lawyer's response? This is not about fairness. It's about ticking a box. Include a denial so we can claim balance. But place it where it won't change the reader's mind. That's important. And if there's a typo, even better. We can mock them for it. It's fake objectivity, a trap disguised as journalism, and it's shameful. Back to the New York Times. Mr. Friedman did not address her allegations about misconduct during the filming by Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. Yeah, because like what? The complaint had come out like 2 seconds ago? Okay, sorry. He alleged that Miss Lively planted negative and completely fabricated and false stories with media about Mr. Baldoni, which he said was in quotes, another reason why Wayfair Studios made the decision to hire a crisis professional. Oh, man. So let me get this straight. New York Times is calling out Friedman for not addressing Baldoni's alleged misconduct while also refusing to provide any actual proof of said misconduct. Make it make sense. They say Mr. Friedman did not address her allegations about misconduct during the filming by Mr. Baldoni and Mr. Heath. Because you never laid out those allegations in any real detail yet, my friends. New York Times doesn't say what Baldoni supposedly did yet. He really doesn't. They just say like she accused him of some stuff that sounds really bad. Okay. They don't cite corroborating witnesses. Like who are they? What did they say? What scenes did he add? Like what? Explain it to me, please. Doesn't explain why these claims didn't surface until now. Nothing. By the way, the Netflix movie is out. So if she's like, yeah, remember that scene in the movie where blah, blah, blah happens? Yeah, I didn't agree to that. Or you remember that scene in the movie that like we chose? It's because I cut out this terrible part where he had me do this terrible thing. Like she doesn't say that. Oh my gosh. They just state that Lively said it happened and expect us to take it as a fact. But the second that Friedman shifts the focus to Lively allegedly planting negative press, he alleged that Miss Lively planted negative press, right? Now suddenly they want evidence. Let's talk about why that's hilarious. I'm gonna plug my phone in here. It's dead. All right. It is really funny. Okay. They're like, he doesn't have evidence. He doesn't have evidence that she planted negative stories. But here's why that's actually hilarious. The New York Times knows that Friedman can't prove that Lively planted stories. How do they know that? Because they have this little thing called journalistic privilege. All journalists have that, especially with mainstream media. That means if Lively or anyone on her team fed them or Hollywood Reporter or whoever, New York Magazine, anybody, if they fed them hit pieces against Baldoni, they don't have to disclose that what's it called? The journalists don't have to disclose it. Like you can't just go subpoena like all the mainstream media outlets before the judge lets you, and it's hard. Literally, they could have been actively working with Lively's camp to shape that narrative. And if Baldoni's lawyers tried to subpoena those communications, the New York Times would just say, sorry, it's a protected source. And boom, no one would ever know. That's how they get to throw around vague accusations with zero proof, but demand absolute receipts from anyone pushing back. That's the double standard. And it's absolutely wild. New York Times can say Lively said she felt uncomfortable. No proof required. But Friedman says, we think Lively strategically planted negative stories. They're like, oh yeah, prove it. This is how they play the game. They create an uneven playing field where their word is enough, but their opponent's word means nothing. It's the same game they played with me. New York Times heavily implied that I was some kind of corrupt manager based on the word of influencers who had every reason to twist the truth. Not every one of them spoke badly about me, but apparently the ones they talked to, they said mean things about me. Did the New York Times demand proof from those influencers? No. Did they let me subpoena their communications to see how the story was shaped? Of course not. The New York Times is hiding behind journalistic privilege while demanding impossible standards of proof from the people they attack. It's the perfect setup. They don't have to prove a thing. You have to prove everything, and you can't. Guess you're guilty. If you can't, then I guess you're guilty, right? This isn't journalism. It's a rigged game. I see you, chat. I'll go through the chat at the end, but I have like my whole monologue here planned. My mic. Oh, there we go. I feel like a lot of YouTubers don't like have a monologue set up, but I'm way too ADHD, and I'm like a little bit of a better writer, especially because like ChatGPT helps me. But I like how it writes in my like snarky tone. That's like actually how I think in my brain. All right. The effort to tarnish Miss Lively appears to have paid off. Within days of the film's release, see, they said appears to have paid off. That's their opinion. They're not going to get in trouble for saying their opinion. Within days of the film's release, the negative media coverage and commentary became an unusually high percentage of their online presence, according to a forensic review Lively sought from a brand marketing consultant. Remember that. Ms. Lively, who is married to the actor and entrepreneur Ryan Reynolds of Deadpool fame and is close with Taylor Swift, experienced the biggest reputation hit of her career. Okay. That is interesting, right? So they say this right up top. I mean, actually, we're like, I don't know. This is number 10, and I've got like 15 points here. So, but there's like 33 points, I think I counted in the whole thing. This is just like the part one of my breakdown of the New York Times story. So what I'm saying here is that, somewhat in middle of the article, they're telling you that, let me just tell you this so you kind of understand. The effort to tarnish Miss Lively appears to have paid off. Within days of the film's release, the negative media What is happening? Hello, can you guys hear me? I literally have never had a stream go this haywire in my entire career of being on the internet. So thanks for hanging in here with me. Alrighty. Okay, so the effort to tarnish Miss Lively's appeared to blah blah blah. Okay, so within days of the film's release, the negative media coverage and commentary became an unusually high percentage negative about her after the film. Well, yeah, because wasn't that right after she had come out at the premiere and said all this weird stuff, and then the article Christy Flaw, this is why Friedman had to release the timeline, because people are confused. Like, when did all this stuff happen? Yeah, it would make sense that that there was an unusually high percentage of her online presence being attacked. According to a forensic review, she sought from a brand marketing consultant. So she's saying a brand marketing consultant said, hey, after the movie released, a lot of people were talking bad about you online. Well, yeah, no shit, Sherlock. What? That's when she was saying all the off-colored remarks that people didn't like. Miss Lively, who is married to the actor and entrepreneur Ryan Reynolds of Deadpool fame and is close with Taylor Swift. Oh my gosh, they're like her dragons. Let's just knock these out. Like, let's just show how like powerful she is. Experienced the biggest reputational hit of her career. Okay. I'm going to skip down because I need this to make sense for everybody, because they do say who Lively worked with. I don't know if it was the same consultant, but they do mention another consultant, and I want you guys to see. Oh, I think it was like Tarakeet or something like that. Hang on. Find. Tarakeet. Tarakeet. Okay, so at the end of the article, they say a brand marketing consultant, Tarakeet, produced a report in August for Miss Lively that concluded she had likely been the object of a targeted multi-channel online attack. Targeted multi-channel online attack. That just means like what? Like Instagram, like Google, I don't know. What does that mean? Targeted multi-channel online attack. Sounds bad, right? Similar to one against Miss Heard. Oh, so Johnny Depp, bad guys are doing it again, and that it was damaging to her reputation. The report did not identify who was behind the attack, but by analyzing the entirety of Google's search index for Miss Lively's name, it found that 35% of the results also included a reference to Mr. Baldoni. This was highly unusual given the length of her career, the company said, and suggested that the media environment was being manipulated. A separate report by Miss Lively's hair care company, Blake Brown, concluded that the social media onslaught also had a negative effect on that business. Her product line, which had launched in August with record-breaking sales, estimates that it lost as much as 78% in sales. Okay, so remember that. So now we're going to go back and let's look at Tarakeet, because this is one of the things that you guys should do is like, who were the sources? Like, who are these experts? Let's dig into them. So I go on Tarakeet's website. Let's talk about them. Oops. Control F. How do I get rid of Control F? Oh my gosh. Oh, there we go. All right, Tarakeet. What a name. I don't know. It's like parakeet. Anyway, Blake Lively's team hired them to figure out why all the negative articles were dominating her search results. And what did Tarakeet find? It says that they found that 30% of online buzz about Lively also include Baldoni's name. And the New York Times frames it like this is a gotcha moment. But this makes total sense. How do I know this? Because I used to sell SEO. Does anybody here know what SEO is? Probably not. And probably not the New York Times readers either. SEO is search engine optimization. How SEO and reputation management actually works? Well, let me explain it to you. I think I can do it like under a minute. Learn with me, okay? SEO, or search engine optimization, is basically internet PR. The internet never forgets, but SEO makes sure it remembers what you want it to. You can't erase bad press, but you can bury it. How? You flood search results with fresh, high-ranking content. You push the bad stuff down. That's what happens like if you have reputation management. They're basically like SEO on steroids, because on the first page of Google, there's like 10 listings. So if you have one bad listing and it's at the very, very top, then that means you got to have 10 good articles that are high ranking to push it down. So the fresher, more authoritative, and more clicked on article is the higher it ranks. old drama, it fades into internet oblivion. So does old good press as well. This is why Lively had a problem. Blake Lively was at her Gossip Girl peak before social media took over. She wasn't constantly going viral. Her fan base wasn't made up of Gen Z TikTok warriors. There wasn't enough new buzz to refresh search results like for positive press around Blake Lively. So when people Googled her name, they got, there was old articles and then there was like all this new stuff that was not so good. You get what I'm saying? Old interviews, outdated coverage, that gets pushed down. And the new stuff, it gets pushed up, like if it's in People Magazine or Us Weekly or whatever. And that's why the bad press stuck. It's why they're saying like 30% of her, she's been around for so long. Yeah, but she wasn't around during the social media world. You get what I'm saying? Here's why SEO sort of worked in favor of Baldoni, although we don't know if he was controlling. It's really hard to control SEO. Like you could push like positive articles, like, yeah, I mean, that's just like SEO. So if that's what they're talking about, a multifaceted campaign or whatever they said. Meanwhile, Baldoni's fans and Lively haters were actively generating new content. There was more articles, more interviews, more social buzz. SEO is a game of volume. More content equals more control over what ranks. And every public figure does this. Every brand, every politician, they want to get positive articles that outrank the other ones. But the New York Times, they make it sound shady because they, Lively essentially got outranked. Let me I don't know, does this make sense to you guys? Like, does it make sense why, if they're saying like 30% or whatever, like that's why, is because like 30% of her career, like, I don't know, probably 70% of her career when she was at her high note was before like social media. Does that make sense? But here's what I'm also gonna include. I want you guys to understand like the differences though when you Tarakeet, what was it again? Tarakeet. Yeah. What happens when the New York Times writes about you, okay? Let me tell you. Like that's what's so crazy about this is like okay. This is what I wanted to explain to you guys. So, oops. Like I know this stuff is like a little in the weeds, but it's like it's important because this is what they do. Like they want you to feel like you're in the weeds so that you're like you check out and you stop listening. Now let's talk about why a New York Times hit piece is an SEO nightmare. Like if the New York Times writes a hit piece about you, why it's like a bazillion times worse. Oops. Are you guys with me? I only have like a few more, tech disasters on the way. Because I did like a deep dive into this SEO thing because I do think this is super interesting. And I don't even know if like, I don't know if I were like explaining damages like from a New York Times piece, why it's so different than literally anything else. So okay, yeah, here we go. This is like the one not serious part of like what I want to say here, but oh my gosh, you're gonna be kidding me. Lost it again. Tarakeet. No, I didn't. Should I read some chats? Okay, wait, I found where I am. So, So let's talk about what really happens when a New York Times Me Too article is written about you. Um, Not all PR nightmares are created equal, and uh, you know, Blake Lively had some bad press. Like we can agree that she had some bad press, right? But she waged this war with the New York Times on Baldoni, and I don't know, like if people realize what the outcome of that is, like 100% of the time. Well, let's just call it 99% of the time, because not everybody has $1 billion to just throw away at suing the New York Times, even though they may or may not think they're going to win. But it's like the only way to get your reputation back is to try to fight them. And I remember, like, when I sued the New York Times after they completely destroyed my dreams, like my hopes and dreams and everything, and like made me feel um so weird, because anytime I was like around people and like my personality's outgoing and stuff, I would think to myself, like, oh my God, what if these people find out that the New York Times thing, and then they like think I'm like fake, or they think I'm a narcissist, or they think I'm like shady. Like I didn't even want to be around people and act like I felt like I need to be like a nun everywhere and not even have a personality, because I'm like, God forbid they believe like what the New York Times does. And like my personality, I guess you could, like if you thought I was a terrible person, you could say like, oh, I could see that, she's like a little out there. Like, I don't know. It just totally made me question everything that I did. And like, it just sucked. And so, like, I felt for Justin, like, it's like, yeah, it's when he said it was cruel what they were doing, it is cruel what they do, what the New York Times does. Um, so Blake Lively had bad press. People didn't like her hair care launch. They thought her Wear Florals promo was tone deaf. And she was mean in an interview once. That's all survivable. That's a Daily Mail article. That's some TikTok drama. It fades. But a New York Times hashtag Me Too expose, or what they did to me, that's permanent. Google doesn't treat all content equally. It ranks sources based on authority, meaning some publications hold way more weight than others. If the Daily Mail says something shady about you, it's annoying, but it's the Daily Mail. People just move on. If TikTok thinks you were mean girl once, that's embarrassing, but the algorithm forgets. If the New York Times labels you problematic, that's forever. Because when someone Googles your name, boom, page one, baby. And unless you have an elite SEO team working around the clock, even then, that article is going to follow you for the rest of your life. This is the power of the New York Times smear campaign. Okay, their SEO juice is unmatched. There's no other website that I can even imagine out there that's ranked higher on Google than the New York Times. Baldoni's not unscathed here. He got a nuclear option launched at him, and now unless he fights back with everything he has, this is what the internet will remember about him. And trust me, I know exactly what that feels like. When the New York Times came for me, I had people telling me to change my name, like just start over, pretend I never existed. Because once they've decided that you're the villain, good luck getting anyone to work with you again. I thought about it every single time I went on a date, every job opportunity, every professional conversation. Because all it takes is one Google search and boom, there it is. That's your legacy now. The New York Times hit piece sitting right at the top, waiting to define me forever. And I won't lie, it drove me to some dark places, places I can joke about now. But at the time, it was cruel. This is the real damage of a New York Times takedown. It's not about the immediate fallout. It's about every future opportunity that gets ripped away. Every person who decides they don't want to be part of the drama. why can't she just get over it? I remember people saying, like, why can't she just get over it? Why does she keep talking about it all the time? Every door that quietly closes behind the scenes. And that's why it matters. Because if they can do it to me, if they can do it to Baldoni, they can do it to you. But I survived. And I sued them, and they certainly underestimated me because I didn't have a billionaire backer. You know what I mean? So I'm glad to see that Baldoni fought back. And I'm glad to see that the internet is doing its thing, and it's doing its thing in a good way. But I want you guys to understand, like, what they get away with and how they get away with it. So let's keep reading. Mr. Baldoni, by contrast, emerged largely unscathed. This month, he was honored at a star-studded event celebrating men who elevate women, combat gender-based violence, and promote gender equality worldwide. On Saturday, however, after this article was published, the talent agency William Morris Endeavor stopped representing Mr. Baldoni, said Ari Emanuel, chief executive of Endeavor, the agency's parent company. Let's talk about what really happens when, oh yeah, sorry, we went over this. Okay, so they say Mr. Baldoni, by contrast, emerged largely unscathed. Ah, just barely, right? Until the New York Times took a swing at him, and you know, when they attack, they don't miss. Let's talk about the actual difference between bad press and a New York Times hit piece. Oh yeah, we just talked about this. I thought that I like lost that. I think I need to work on like how I organize my my little prompts here. Um yeah, it's wild though. Like, you know, I wasn't scared to speak out when this article came out because I knew like exactly what they were doing. Like it played, it was like, you know, like a trauma response, like PTSD. I was like, oh my God, they're doing it again. They're doing it again to somebody else. And it's like, it's infuriating. Like I couldn't even like, you know, I try not to get into like this internet like drama stuff, but if there's one thing I'll always stand up for, it's like what's right. You know what I mean? So, and the New York Times, like, they need to be canceled. People, I don't believe in cancel culture, but stop reading the New York Times. Unfollow them everywhere. Go unfollow them everywhere they are, please. Like, if somebody says, like, "Oh, I saw this in New York Times," oh, that's like a rag. What do they call it? That's not. It's a tabloid. Okay, they write Miss Lively's complaint against Mr. Baldoni, Mr. Heath, Wayfair, Steve Sarowitz, a co-founder of the studio, a co-founder, Mr. Wallace, Miss Nathan, and Jennifer Abel, another public relations executive involved in the campaign. By the way, they basically shit on all those people and their companies, right? Alleges sexual harassment and retaliation, among other claims. The complaint filed. Okay, this is where they get into it. Finally, we're halfway through the article, and they said, her complaint alleges sexual harassment and retaliation, among other claims. The complaint filed with the California Civil Rights Department is a precursor to a lawsuit. In a statement, Ms. Lively said, "I hope that my legal action helps pull back the curtain on these sinister retaliatory tactics to harm people who speak up about misconduct and help protect others who may be targeted." She also denied that she or any other representatives planted or spread negative information about Mr. Baldoni or Wayfarer. Oh, look, another complaint filed for maximum PR impact. Blake Lively's complaint, not a lawsuit, not a criminal charge, not even an official HR report filed during filming. It was a California Civil Rights Department CRD complaint, which, for those playing along at home, is basically a pre-lawsuit formality. It hasn't been investigated yet, and unless your lawyer is Brian, the equalizer Friedman, cases like this take years to even get to discovery. Discovery is when both sides get receipts. You have to turn in all your text messages and all that stuff. And let's not forget, she chose not to file an HR complaint during filming. I see a lot of people repeating this line. He did something with HR. He messed up with HR. And then, Lively chose not to file an HR complaint during filming because an official HR complaint would have triggered an on-set investigation in real time. If something was truly urgent, why did she wait? She waited until the movie was already out on Netflix. Would it be totally crazy to think that this was a strategic move to wrestle control of the movie away from Wayfair? Because if the internet and Friedman had gone into action with Sarowitz, if the internet and Friedman had not gone into action with Sarowitz billions backing them, the next step would be Sony, in my opinion, slapping that morality clause on Baldoni. Remember that morality clause? Yeah, we're going to enact that. You're out of here. Speculation, sure, but let's be real. The timing is sus. And I called that quite a while ago, guys, the whole morality clause potential. I don't know if I feel like I've been planting a lot of seeds. Maybe I'm like no, I'm not like the New York Times. Okay. I'm planting seeds that are true. That are well researched. Okay. A lot of people in Hollywood, when they sign contracts with big studios after the Me Too movement, there was morality clauses put into their contracts. And then they were sort of used by the studio if there was another reason they didn't want you anymore or whatever. And you know how I clocked this the second I heard it was just a complaint? I knew what was going on because the New York Times pulled the same exact stunt on me. I know. I'm just making this. Everything is about me, isn't it? So he says, was it true that Blake Lively has no contract? That is the reason she demand what she want. I don't know. They said that she never signed her contract. I don't know. I don't know what that means. I mean, I'm sure she got paid. So, yeah. So this is same playbook, different target. When the New York Times smeared me, they propped up a labor board complaint from Brittany Broski like it was some major revelation. Their version was this: influencer files a complaint against Ari. She acted as a talent agent without a license. Here's a reality check. I did have a talent agency license. And more importantly, you don't even need one in order to rep TikTokers. You think the everyday mom and dad at home reading the New York Times know that? No. And now here they are running the exact same scam with Lively's CRD complaint. They omit key facts and frame it as a smoking gun, when in reality, these complaints don't even have to be proven to cause massive damage. But here's my favorite part. Lively says she hopes this pulls back the curtain on sinister retaliatory tactics. Girl, your team worked with the New York Times to drop a PR attack disguised as journalism. The only curtain being pulled back is the one hiding how powerful people use the media to burn their enemies to the ground. And what's even more predictable, she denies planting negative stories about Baldoni, knowing full well that the journalistic privilege means that there's likely not a huge way that Baldoni is going to be able to prove that either. Sound familiar? Yeah, because they did the same thing to me. I know, it's like a broken record. I keep saying that, but it's true. I want you guys to see the pattern here. The New York Times' favorite move is framing framing contractual obligations as sinister. So in the hit piece about me, they let an ex-client say this: anytime talent wants to leave, she, Ari, goes straight to suing them. Another person said, I have asked her to release me from my contract. Let's think about what that actually means, guys. The influencers didn't want to pay me what they owed, the agreements that they said, how it was going to work. They wanted to break a signed contract without consequences. These are people over 18 years old. They had lawyers when they entered into the contracts. I didn't force them to sign the agreements. They had lawyers. And the New York Times framed it like I was the villain for expecting basic business agreements to be honored. Notice the language. They don't say explicitly that I scammed anyone. They don't say I stole anything because they didn't, and they couldn't prove, you know what I mean? Like they couldn't say that I did or prove that I did, so they don't want to be sued. They just imply that I was difficult for not working for free, which, let's be real, I could do this too, right? Oh, did the New York Times expect a Latina woman, a Mexican woman, to build something successful and from scratch and just work for free? Like a slave? Yeah, you see what I did there? That's called framing. I don't do that. Okay. I don't use my ethnicity or the fact that I'm a woman to like play victim because it's BS. Okay. No. But that's what they did. They framed these influencers as these poor, innocent people that got taken advantage of, when in reality, they were just trying to cheat me out of the money that I had earned. Now, compare that to how they frame Lively's CRD complaint. They don't tell you what misconduct she's actually alleging. They don't explain how any of this is proven or corroborated. They just drop vague buzzwords like harassment and retaliation to let your brain fill in the blanks. And the best part, they let Lively deny planting negative stories about Baldoni without pushing for proof either way, because they know journalistic privilege means there's no way for Baldoni to disprove it. This is how the New York Times protects its chosen ones while annihilating everyone else. Yeah, the weight thing. It's just like the weight thing. Yeah. Oh, he was fat shaming her. She herself said in the movie that, she takes such like, it's so what is it? She was so into like, losing weight for movies. She wanted her and her husband take it so seriously. Anyway, we'll get into that later. We're almost done. We're on 13, number 13. You might have missed this. In May, several months after the filming wrapped, Mr. Baldoni realized that Mr. Reynolds had blocked him on Instagram. We should have a plan for if she does the same when the movie comes out, Mr. Baldoni wrote of Ms. Lively in a text exchange that included Mrs. Abel or Ms. Abel, a publicist who has long worked with him and Wayfair. Plans make me feel more at ease. That's the only thing that they quote Baldoni as saying. Plans make me feel at ease. Baldoni didn't say, let's ruin her. He said, if she blocks me, how do we handle the PR fallout? I mean, which, considering the media circus around this, is just common sense. And let's talk about what they don't question. Why did Ryan Reynolds block Baldoni in the first place? Had Lively already been feeding the media a narrative before the movie even dropped? Classic framing trick. And, make Baldoni look calculating for checks notes, preparing for bad press. Meanwhile, the actual bad press maneuvering never gets a second look. I mean, like, how long was, Lively talking to the New York Times? That's what I want to know. I guarantee you it was before October 31st. Background on Baldoni and studio context. So then they get into this. Mr. Baldoni, 40, and Mr. Heath, 55, had a lot riding on the film, which is based on a best-selling novel by Colleen Hoover. Mr. Baldoni. Okay, and here's what they don't say. They don't say it was a best-selling novel by Colleen Hoover about DV, and it had a lot of sex scenes in it and a lot of, stuff. I mean, maybe they do later on, but let's keep reading. So if you're just reading this and you don't know what the movie is about, you're just like, oh my gosh, Baldoni sounds like a jerk, But like, anyway. Mr. Baldoni was best known for the CW satirical romantic dramedy Jane the Virgin. Wayfair provided the resources for bigger ambitions. It was bankrolled by the billionaire Steve Sarowitz, who is co-chair of the studio with Mr. Baldoni. They and Mr. Heath, the chief executive, are all deeply involved with the Baha'i religious organization, which promotes unity, peace, and gender equality. Mr. Baldoni has presented himself as an ally to women, writing books, co-hosting a podcast with Mr. Heath, and giving talks on toxic masculinity. Oh, wow. A whole paragraph just to subtly sneak in a smear against an entire faith. Bold strategy, New York Times. Sarowitz, Baldoni, and Heath are Baha'i, a religion literally centered on unity, peace, and gender equality. But the New York Times frames it like a culty boys club funding Baldoni's bigger ambitions. And let's be real, if this were about any other religion, they would have never written it like this. But Baha'i doesn't have mainstream power, so the New York Times casually taints it by association, like a subtle, isn't that interesting moment. It's a small dig, but a big mistake. Huge, you could say. I'm going to take a leap and say Mr. Sarowitz didn't like that very much. 15. Here's my last, I think this is my last quote that I think a lot of people missed. I mean, it's the whole art of 15 like lines of the article that I feel like I broke down. Miss Lively, 37, was by far the biggest star. The TV show Gossip Girl catapulted her to early fame, and she appeared in films ranging from The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants to The Town. She built businesses outside of the entertainment industry, appeared on the covers of glossy magazines, and amassed more than 45 million Instagram followers. Miss Lively had expressed concerns about Mr. Baldoni from the beginning. According to her legal complaint, there we go again. See, the New York Times basically didn't write anything. They just wrote what's in the complaint. Before shooting began, for example, she objected to sex scenes he wanted to add that she considered gratuitous. Okay, which ones, guys? Because I still like, which ones did she say no to? Like, has anybody gone through like the 800 pages of that timeline yet online? Okay. She objected to sex scenes he wanted to add that she considered gratuitous. In November 2023, as the cast of It Ends With Us was preparing to resume shooting after a month-long writer's strike, Miss Lively went to Wayfair with a side letter seeking safeguards. Yes, we all know about that letter, right? Not an official HR complaint, but a letter of demands. Plus, it's like, oh, look, it's the obligatory Blake Lively puff piece. Okay, let's break that down. She's by far the bigger star. Okay, and this isn't like a popularity contest. They list her entire IMDb page like it's some resume. Cool, but that was this relevant to the lawsuit, the complaint. They casually slip in her 45 million Instagram followers, just so you know that she's really popular, because nothing says credibility like a big follower count, right? And then buried at the end, we get the real setup. Lively had concerns about Baldoni from the beginning. Vague, no details. She didn't like the sex scenes. Again, fine, but was there an actual HR complaint? Like, we know that typically these things are like, negotiated up front. She's talking about a kiss to her neck or like a little brush to her neck with Baldoni's mouth, because in the book, apparently everybody's saying that Ryle, the character that Baldoni played, was obsessed with Lily's neck because she had a tattoo, la 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 la. I don't know, like some like fan fiction stuff with the Colleen Hoover book, but like it's not like he went off course like during like a humping each other scene. Okay, it's wild. Okay, anyway, she went to Wayfair with a side letter demanding safeguards after the strike, after the movie she's saying was a mess. Well, maybe it was a mess because she was like asking for all these things that are like not normal. But here's what's missing: context, because the New York Times isn't here to educate you on how movies actually work. They don't want you to think critically. They want you to think Baldoni sucks. Okay. Since when does an actress get to rewrite an entire movie? Lively didn't just voice concerns, she completely took over. She rewrote scenes, allegedly, re-edited entire cuts, allegedly, forced the studio to use her version of the film instead of the director's, even though his side like got better reviews with a women audience. that was testing the film. Imagine if Tom Brady decided mid-season that he just didn't like Bill Belichick's game plan. And instead of following the coach, he just rewrote the entire playbook and then smeared Belichick when he pushed back. That would never happen because in football, the coach is in charge. Same thing here. Baldoni was the director, the producer, and the co-chair of the studio. He was literally hired to be in charge. But Lively decided that because she was the bigger star, she could override him. And now we're supposed to pretend like that's normal? No actual evidence of Baldoni harassing her. No mention that intimacy coordinators were already in place. No real context, just a carefully framed hero-villain setup. And the best part, they phrase it like Baldoni wanted to add sex scenes out of nowhere, when in reality, it's a movie about romance and TV and all these different things. The source material had sex scenes, but like that's not even the scenes that I don't think that we were even talking about. I don't know. Maybe I could be wrong, but she's talking about like a dancing scene where he like brushes up on her neck for a second. But why explain that when they can just make him look creepy instead? And now there's a whole website with Blake's text showing her saying things that teeter on sexual innuendos too, not to mention Ryan Reynolds talking about tattooing his perineum. Perineum? I don't know how to say that. I don't ever want to hear that word again. Excuse me. All right, wrapping up. How to read between the lines of a New York Times hit piece. So we just went through 15 things most people completely missed in the New York Times Justin Baldoni article, and guess what? We're only halfway through. The article is a masterclass in manipulation, and if you don't know what to look for, you will fall for it every single time. So let's talk about the key takeaways, because if you don't want to get played by the media, you need to start reading articles like a lawyer or like somebody who's gotten a hit piece written about him, not like a fan. Here's how you spot media manipulation in real time. Pay attention to sourcing. If they say, according to the complaint, but never show the actual receipts or the actual evidence, red flag. If they rely on anonymous sources close to the situation, assume it's either PR spin or complete nonsense. Look at how they frame things. Baldoni wants a PR strategy equals he's an evil mastermind. Lively demands an entirely new cut of the film equals brave and bold. Same action, different framing. That's how they control the narrative. Notice what's missing? They imply Baldoni was inappropriate, but don't tell you what he actually did. They claim his PR team buried Lively, but don't say what stories they allegedly planted. They call a standard crisis management strategy a smear campaign, but leave out that every A-list celebrity and politician does the exact same thing every day. And New York Times knows all about it. How I learned to dissect an article like this? Listen, I had to learn the hard way. When the New York Times came for me, I had to sit there and figure out exactly how they twisted words, omitted facts, and framed things to make me look as bad as possible. It was like reverse engineering a crime scene after the fact. And now I never take any article at face value, even when someone like Diddy, who has had rumors swirling for years, I still took a step back and said, okay, let me see for myself. Then the Cassie lawsuit dropped and the security footage leaked. And guess what? That's when I was like, I'm 100% done. I don't like Diddy. Not because some headline told me to, but because I saw the evidence with my own eyes. That's how you avoid being a pawn in someone else's PR game. Coming soon. Trust me, we're not done yet. We still have half of this article to go. And I guarantee you there's even more framing, omissions, and straight up nonsense waiting for us. So if you want to keep your media BS detector sharp, make sure you're following, because this breakdown isn't over yet. Until next time, guys. Listen, breaking down media manipulation like this takes time, research, and a whole lot of caffeine. The New York Times, they've got $1 billion backing. Me, I've got the truth and an internet connection. If you want to help me keep exposing how the media twists reality, here's how you can support. You can like, comment, and share this video. The more people see it, the harder it is for the media to get away with their playbook. If you want, please drop a comment, share this video, and send it to a friend who needs to wake up. You guys know engagement is everything. So yeah, and make sure you're following me everywhere. Little Miss Jacob on X, on Twitter, or TikTok, all the places. The more people that see these stories, it's harder for the New York Times to go unchecked, and hopefully people do unfollow them. Steve Sarowitz, I think he's a hero. Okay, we'll get into that next time. But like honestly, if he wasn't doing what he's doing with what I'm assuming is backing this lawsuit all the way. Like it's just, you don't see this happen very often where the New York Times gets exposed because it's so expensive and it's so difficult. So if you know Steve Sarowitz or anyone in Hollywood looking for their next screenplay, shoot them my account. If Wayfair survives this, I have some ideas. I am writing a book, and also, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you need help with short form content, my agency, creatorgenius.com, helps small and medium-sized businesses fix their tragic social media. If your dentist's Instagram looks like it was made in 2012, please tell them I exist. And also, merch is live. Head to littlemissjacob.com for my book. We're raising money to get it made, and the latest Cry Bully collection, including the OK Cry Bully, The Struggle is Fake hoodie, and everything else I've got in the works. littlemissjacob.com. At the end of the day, the media only gets away with this if people let them, and I'm going to make sure they don't. So there's more to come. Love you, besties. Thanks for hanging out with me. Let's check out any super chats. Oh, thank you, citizen journalist. Thanks for the super chat. I see you. Is it the same citizen journalist that's on X? Because you are doing the Lord's work, I feel like. Oh, thank you. 7 Poet Poetry, $49 super chat. I feel like I need to that's like so nice. Thank you. I feel like I'm not gonna leave yet, but like we can play a second of it. Watch your step. She's here to play. Can you guys still hear me if the music's on? She is fierce, takes the drama, cuts it clear. Oh, you guys can probably hear it like in the background. Can you guys still hear me and the music? All right. Thank you, 7 Poet Poetry. Sarah Paul, thank you for the super sticker. You guys, this is like my first time getting all these things. Hallie T Lightwork. Oh, I think I did post that. Thank you guys so much. Really so sweet. Means a lot. I'm just going to leave this one up because it's so nice. So what did you guys think? I mean, like, had you guys even read the New York Times article? Oh, okay. Before I leave, I did pull some stuff I wanted to show you. Little Miss Group. Okay, hang on. Oh, I was a little stressed earlier, you guys, especially with that beeping. I don't know what that was. It was so bizarre. It was like, I don't know. Somebody doesn't want me to make this video. Okay, so this is what I wanted you guys to see. This came out like a while ago, and I feel like a lot of people didn't even like pay attention to it. Like, I want you guys to send this to anybody that's like, oh, but like, you know, they filed an HR complaint and then that's why they stuck him in the basement and la la la. It's not true. Okay, like if people want to like debate this, then like at least come with real facts. Don't just like make stuff up. And you guys should call them out if they. All right, so here we go. Listen to what he says here. It's important. Here we go.
Should not be trusted. This person is not a good person, right? I just don't understand legally the difference, because you're not allowed to retaliate, you know, to punish somebody in essence for accusing in this way. But also, if it's false, does a man have the right to come out and say, don't believe her, this is a bad person, either directly or through PR people?
Well, remember that there was actually no allegation of sexual harassment until the lawsuit was filed. I mean, that's when the allegations of sexual harassment came up. They didn't come up before them.
Do you guys hear that? The CRD complaint was basically the first official HR complaint. She didn't file an HR complaint. And I think that's important. You know why? Because if you file an HR complaint, in Hollywood, like they're going to look into it. And when they were filming, I don't think she wanted them to look into it because I think they're going to find that there was no such thing going on. So that's important. There was no HR complaint filed until after the movie was made, way after the movie was. There was no. It's not like, oh yeah, he was doing terrible things. HR. No. She didn't even complain to HR. There was no HR complaints. It's important, guys, because honestly, I hear so many people being like, you do hear about all the HR complaints? No. What are we talking about? What HR complaint? He says it. I mean, if he's lying, that's wild because he's the lawyer on the case and he would get in trouble if he was caught like saying something that wasn't true. And then one other thing here. So a lot of people talk about the Hailey Bieber thing, like, oh, well, he did say he wanted it to be like the Hailey Bieber tweet. This is how, I mean, this could also be spin. I'm not going to discount that.
He's a bully.
This could be spin, but this is what Brian Friedman says about that whole, what did Baldoni mean when he said this is what we would need?
If that's what happens, right? Like people will come out naturally or.
So hang on.
To me, meaning that you got all these attack things in the plan. I don't want to attack anyone, right? I just want to make sure there's not attacks on us. Everything in his words is protection, not planting stories, not doing anything offensive, not doing anything with bots or anything like that. And then as you walk through that text message string, it's so taken out of context because what they're saying is we can't put this in writing to him, right? They can't put it in writing to him because he's expressed over and over and over again he doesn't want to go on the offensive. He doesn't want to start, attacking anyone. He wants to actually protect her. He actually wants to protect the film, and he wants to protect himself from negative press. That's exactly what he wants to do. He wants to be protective. That's all through there. They realize that if they give him a plan that's an attacking plan or saying we're going to bury her or anything like that, he's going to say, we're not hiring you. We don't want anything to do with this. That's what they're talking about. This is all taken out of context. And if they would have included other text messages, you would have seen that to be the clear intention. It's easy to pluck and and cherry pick certain text messages that say certain things, but this is nothing of the sort. And let's talk about the Hailey Bieber text, right? What he's talking about is this is what we need. We don't need to do this. We need actually people to come out and say she's a bully if that's what happens, right? Like people will come out naturally, organically, and say that. Nobody planted the Hailey Bieber story. That was from a fan who put that out there. What he's saying is what we need is, as a protective plan, is that people come out and tell the truth. And if Blake Lively is a bully, that they're going to come out and say that. That's what he wants as a plan, not to plant stories.
This is what we need for people to call her out as being a bully. Yeah, I get that. You're being attacked.
Or anything else. As a matter of fact, that's belied by all of the texts that he's sent, right?
So
I thought that was interesting. I know a lot of people like haven't seen that or just are forgetting that Friedman actually came out and said that's what he meant by the Hailey Bieber thing. Again, he could be lying, he could be twisting. We don't know because they said he wants to feel like she can be buried. It's also such a weird way to put that. Like they didn't say like he wants to bury her. It was like he wants to feel like she can be buried. I don't know. It's like weirdly taken out of, like, it doesn't sound like a normal way you talk. So I don't know if it was taken out of context or like it sounds like it could be taken out of context, right? This is another thing that people I think are missing. Friedman says this is a pretty bold statement to make right here.
I would say all of it did not generate with this PR team. I mean, since.
So here she asks him
anymore. So I posted the video. So that one, which I think is the most famous example, Brian, the journalist herself is saying she had absolutely no connection to Justin Baldoni
they're talking about
or these
Christy
PR
Flaw.
agents that we've been discussing. And is that basically your point? That would you say the vast majority, most, all of the negative press generated about Blake in the summer did not actually originate with this PR team?
I would say all of it. Did not generate with this PR team. I mean, since I've been involved in this case, I've gotten 50.
I mean, for him to say that is pretty bold, because if he gets proven wrong, like, it's not good look to lie, right? Like, it's not, if he lied about that, like if he's saying, I would say all was not generated from them. Now, they could have been amplifying stuff, and they could have been, there is a way to not use bots. I wanted to show you guys one thing, and in some people might say, oh, so you're on Lively's side now. No, but I do want to show you guys like a very normal tactic that we do, because I make short form videos for people, right? And there is like this social media tactic that can be used to make a video go more viral, and that's like basically negative comments in the comment section. Let me show you that. I want to show you this video. This is like not a colleague, but like somebody that does kind of similar things what I do. Explaining it. I felt like he did like a really good job explaining it. Oh my goodness, I lost it. Oh, here it is. Copy link. Copy. Because like I do think it's interesting. Like one side is like, oh yeah, they posted all these what are they called, smear, or they like amplified all this stuff, and so here's what I think. If Jed Wallace's team did anything, I feel like this is probably what they did.
Strategy. Have had some editors.
Okay, wait.
Comment strategy. Have had some editors in our company. They'll just go and comment on a video and just say something completely opposite to start some controversy in the comments. And it always sparks debate, just gets more people commenting, and that helps the video perform. So
usually gym bros who are doing this, they'll go onto random people's IGs and they'll just comment, whatever, bro, or calm down or something like that.
We call it our dark comment strategy. Have had some editors.
It's called a dark comment strategy. So when you have, like, you can go on a website that's called, like, I think leave an Instagram comment or something. You can leave a negative comment and then it like sparks debate. So it either creates people saying like, no, they're standing up for the other side or whatever. This is like a normal strategy that is used to create engagement, because if more people are commenting in your comment section or they're fighting with each other, it makes the video go up. So I don't know. There's very strategic things that maybe that team did. It's possible that they did something like that, but I don't know how that's like a smear campaign. Is just like using like, commenting from like, it's not a fake account. You can just like comment from like a made up account on like stuff that's already existing in order to make it go bigger. So for example, like let's say that there's a negative article a negative TikTok about Blake Lively. You can send in like not bots, but like you basically post comment. You could say like, either, yeah, I believe in this, or no. And then like, you basically flood the comment section. So it makes that piece more viral. All it's doing is amplifying a piece that somebody else made, but it doesn't mean you paid that person or anything. You can do that with SEO too. I mean, like there's so many ways to amplify content, but it's like, it's not like the other side doesn't do it. It's not like, it's just so weird, So, all right, I'm going to do 2 more like little videos I wanted to show you guys. These are creators that I actually really like, and it's a bummer to see how they've been duped. And this is like, I think these came out like closer to like right when it happened, but it's just an example of just like how unfair it is, because once the story's out there, like some people don't deep dive into this stuff. Like there's
I'm like,
300
this is a
people.
lot of information.
It's a lot.
There's a lot of people in here watching because you guys are interested in this stuff, because I think people have like a deep sense of justice. But at the same time, you know, my boyfriend doesn't care. Like I'm saying not about he cares about me, but I'm saying like he doesn't care about Justin Baldoni. Like, you know, people like don't care. I mean, like, you know, it might not affect Justin, but it's like it's still not right. I don't know. Like here's Caitlin Bristow.
Yeah, break it down of what's going on and where they're at.
It's a lot to digest. So there's two schools of thought. Basically, her school of thought is that, or what she alleges is that he sexually harassed her, put her in really compromising situations, was awful to her, very inappropriate, and he tried to get retribution on her. And he sent basically a bot farm, or he hired a PR agency to ruin
She corrected herself there because she's like, but that's what they were saying, that he threw a bot
her
farm on her.
reputation.
Yeah, what are they
online.
called?
Crisis management.
Crisis management.
Yeah. Which we almost needed, but at one point.
Yeah.
What he says is that she signed on to the film and then became a total nightmare and completely took over the entire film. And
I think these girls are like now super pro Baldoni, but this was like only 10 days ago.
everything that she alleges, he has an
Oh no, I'm sorry. This was I think January 10th, or I'm not sure. I'll look.
explanation for.
Right.
So for example, like she says that he was really creepy and at one point said that she smelled good during a scene together where he didn't even need to say anything.
Yeah.
That was like ad-libbing and it was coming onto her. He says that she had complained that she had that her smell tanner made her smell bad before that scene started. And so he was just trying to like make her feel comfortable because they were like right next to each other. So like for everything that she says, there's a he says.
God.
This
But
is what
it's just so
makes me
hard for me
sad.
because as soon as I hear that he made someone uncomfortable, I immediately hate him.
Yeah, for sure.
And so I'm like,
As soon as I hear that he made someone uncomfortable, I immediately hate him. That's what Caitlin said. Ah, it sucks because I really like him.
I feel like every time I see something, it's like Team Justin. And I'm like,
Everyone
are we
is
forgetting that
No.
he
No.
crossed lines and was very inappropriate? And now
Okay, he crossed lines that was very inappropriate. I don't think like okay, what lines did he cross and what did he do that was inappropriate? Like that's what we need to figure out. What does she think he did that was inappropriate?
now
Right?
has an excuse for everything. So where do we stand?
Everyone is Team Justin, by the way.
What?
So
Yeah.
our episode was leaned more heavily towards Blake. It was an episode called Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni. We're releasing another episode on Wednesday. So by the time this comes out, it will be available.
Okay.
And it's really going over his side of the story.
Yeah.
It's just hard. I really don't know where I land right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that a couple things. I think that you can be a total nightmare to work with,
Totally.
and you can also be sexually harassed.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that both things can be true.
Right.
I do think, there might have been scenarios where she was sexually harassed, but then also certain things happened that were not as black and white as she says they are.
Right.
And he does have an explanation that makes sense for
Right.
that. It's very murky. And this is why, like Lauren and I have been saying, like, we need somebody else from this film to speak out on this because
Yeah.
it's such a he said, she said, how are we interpreting these text messages between them and their respective people? It's really murky.
I just refuse to be on a guy's side if he has made a woman feel that way. Like, I don't care what you're.
I don't want to be on his side if he's made a woman feel that way, because we have to believe everybody, right? But that's the problem with these false claims, is that it basically destroys when somebody actually comes out and is telling the truth.
Excuses are, or if she like I just don't. I'm like, that's terrible. Is she difficult to work with, or is she an assertive woman
Yeah.
like who knows
Yeah.
what she's doing? But like that you can't justify.
I think there are also things that he doesn't have an explanation for.
Right. Right.
If that's worth noting. Also, I think that the internet and people in general were ready to take down Blake Lively. I think she was already kind of like
I know.
I didn't
annoying
care
people
about
in
taking
general,
down
and
Blake
then I think when
Lively.
this,
I liked
wave
her and
happened, It
Ryan.
was just like everyone got out their pitchforks.
Yes.
No.
Oh, they were like,
Mhm.
take her down.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my
No.
gosh. I felt so bad because again, things come out so quickly. Everyone jumps to conclusions, everyone jumps to conspiracy theories, and then it's like, no, you have to wait till the actual truth comes out.
Yeah.
And then
Right.
you can
Yeah, but she's not talking about when everybody was completely crucifying Baldoni.
pick a
We didn't have to like wait for the truth to come out then.
side, but at the end of the day, If he made her uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, there are crazy things like
If he made her uncomfortable, what? It's not illegal. I mean, I'm like, what? That's what pisses me off too. It's like anybody can say they're uncomfortable. Like I was saying, like yesterday I went to the mall and there was this like guy at the like being like, "Hey, do you want a shoe shine?" And like he was like, "Hey, what's up, sexy?" Like, yeah, it made me feel uncomfortable. I'm like, "Get away, creep." I'm just kidding, but like, you know, that's how I felt. I didn't feel comfy. But like, I'm not gonna go report him to HR. Are you crazy?
during a scene where she was during the birth scene.
Yeah.
He had his friend play the role of her OBGYN. So who was right.
You see how all the things that the New York Times dropped, like he had his friend be the OG. This is before I think everybody realized that he was, you know, a trained actor. But I called that out on my first tweet. I'm like, hey guys, just go look up who the OBGYN is. And I looked him up and I found his credentials.
Between her legs, apparently there was just a small piece of cloth covering her genitalia.
Yeah. Oh, and now it turns out she was wearing briefs and a fake belly and a thing over her. So that was also wrong.
Yeah.
Like, and come back and record the record or fix the record, guys.
And she didn't know this until they were about to film it, that he basically just this role typically would be filled by a professional actor, a professional local actor. But
you see how they're just like regurgitating the words that like, you know, that the New York Times said or whoever. I don't remember if this was in the complaint or what. It's not their fault though, guys. I'm not like saying this to attack them. I actually like their podcast. I like Caitlin, but it's just like if the average person can be duped.
But no, it was his friend was going to do it.
Why?
Because it's like, she's saying it's like a favor to the friend from him. Like, you know, like I'm going to let you be in this.
God.
Yeah. And one of the billionaire co-founder of Wayfarer Studios, he barely ever visited set, but just happened to be on set the day that she was doing the birth scene. And
what, now it turns out he didn't like, even go in there, right?
There's this whole talk about how they were like really pressuring her to do it naked. The set at the time was not a closed set, which is what it should have been, where, you know, like only the essential people are there. There's no extra monitors. It's just like really private to, you know, protect everyone involved in the scene. And that it was absolutely not that. God. So just, you know, and I think
like, here's the thing, guys, like, again, I like these people, but it's like, they've been duped.
Other thing worth noting is that Justin was the director. He had, you know, was her boss in this. And so it's like, you know, it's important to note that if he was in a position of power over her, even though she's Blake Lively and he
I know they've completely changed.
Like, you know, there's wrongdoing there.
Yes. Yeah. And he hasn't apologized or anything.
No, he's suing her. Yeah, he's suing her.
Like the fact that he hasn't said like if I had made her feel like any kind of apology, and this also
that's not true, right? Okay, anyway, I missed where we were, but anyway, so that kind of bummed me out. But it just is like one of those things where it's like, you know, people are getting duped. Now here's another one. I love these girls, by the way, and I know them. And by the way, so I don't know if you guys have heard of The Toast, but Claudia Oshry also got completely smeared by Taylor Lorenz, not when she was with the New York Times, but another time. And, you know, listen to this, because she does actually get it wrong. And that's the thing. It's like, it's so confusing. It's hard to not get, like, unless you're reading.
Okay. For me, the biggest part of this story, and so many people like, this is their big thing about with the lawsuit, is that like really he has disproven everything when it comes to the intimacy coordinator. And so I'm going to read from my notes. I watched an amazing video from like an intimacy coordinator expert. I just want to shout her out because I'm like about to literally copy everything she said. It's like a nice long 10-minute video. Her name is Brenna Perez. Okay. So Blake has said that there wasn't an intimacy coordinator present. She said that in interviews, and I think she alleges it in her complaint as well. And Justin, you know, shows proof. Like, what are you talking about? We had an intimacy coordinator. But if you actually, so that looks like a contradiction, right? Blake's lying. But if you actually read, Justin actually corroborates a lot of what Blake is saying. So after the SAG-AFTRA break, Blake had demanded that there be an intimacy coordinator on set at all times. Usually,
after the SAG-AFTRA break, she had asked for a coordinator at all times. That's what she remembers.
An intimacy coordinator just shows up on the days where we're fucking, you know, they don't need to be around all the time. But because Justin had like this obsession with adding in kisses and adding in sex scenes that weren't previously agreed to, Blake.
Has there been any proof that he was adding in sex scenes, or just that he added in that one neck kiss? Because I don't remember. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could be wrong on this. I just don't remember any part in her complaint where she like said, okay, this was a specific sex scene that he added. So
you're going to do that. Like, I want an intimacy coordinator on set every single day because who knows when you're going to start kissing me. And she's totally valid in that. And what I didn't realize that this girl explained in the video is like, when you sign on to a project, every intimate scene, literally every kiss, but mostly like the sexy scenes, are agreed upon contractually before. So if you do want to add, sometimes it happens, it complicates things, but it has to be agreed upon. But it's like, you can't just go around like adding in an ass grab, you know? It's not improv. Like, these things, because of SAG and they have these rules in place, are to protect actors and actresses. So you can't just go around adding stuff. So the fact that Blake alleges that Justin really wanted to add stuff like complicates things a lot. So him saying that there was a coordinator on set is, you know, not untrue, but it's half true, because if you're kissing her on days when the lady's not there, who does that help?
Right.
So
this is the part where she gets it wrong.
After the SAG-AFTRA break, they had agreed to have the coordinator on set full time. So Justin is like, she was there full time. What are you talking about? And he shares a text message. Not only was she there, but I actually tried to coordinate a meeting between her and Blake said no. So you read the text messages, and they're coming off the break. So I think they're about to be back. And he says, by the way, I found an amazing coordinator. So first of all, it's a coordinator who he found.
Okay, so so that's why the timeline was so important that Friedman put out, because the way that they say it in the New York Times article is they say when they return to set, blah blah blah, and then they talk about the New York Times, or then they talked about the intimacy coordinator. Okay, so it makes sense why Claudia here thinks intimacy. I'm trying to find it in the article. Okay, this is how it goes. It goes. Okay, this is like the first sentence of the article. Yeah. It says, last summer, as the release of It Ends With Us approached, Justin Baldoni, the director and the star of the film, Jamie Heath, the lead producer, hired a public relations expert. During shooting, Blake Lively, the co-star, had complained that men repeatedly violated physical boundaries and made sexual and other inappropriate comments to her. The studio, Wayfair, agreed to provide a full-time intimacy coordinator. Do you see how the New York Times framed it? They framed it to look like he brought in an intimacy coordinator after, and Claudia falls for it. She's like, after he brought her in, but in the Brian Friedman stuff, he shows that happened in like, I think it's like April of 23 or something like that, way before. So this is wrong, but like, I understand why she fell for it, because it's like, so they made it so that you would think this.
Yeah. I'd love to set up a meeting off set, like not while they're on set. Like, I'd love to set up a meeting. And Blake's like, no, I'm good. I'll meet her when we're back on set first day. So look, Blake's being difficult. I don't know that she necessarily wanted to meet your coordinator. Like, how do we know she's legit after this SAG-AFTRA break, where this list of 30?
It wasn't after the SAG-AFTRA break. It wasn't the list. You see? Like, this kills me because I love them, but it's like they got duped.
30 things we agreed on. You've been showing me pornographic videos. Your producing partner is a freak. All these things, like you add kissing scenes.
Yeah, see, your producing.
I don't know that I want to meet off set with you and your intimacy coordinator. So it's like, look, Blake's being difficult to work with. But then also the really interesting thing is Justin alleges in his lawsuit that he wasn't adding all these sexy scenes. It was the intimacy coordinator's idea.
Ooh.
Now, that is not the job of an intimacy coordinator. That's like actually really weird. So if that's true,
Why,
like,
more work for her.
No, but let's say that's true.
More hours.
You hired a freaky ass intimacy coordinator because that's not her job. Why the fuck would Blake want to meet this person?
Right.
And let's say it's not true. You're the one adding those things and you're a freak. But now we understand why Blake said no.
But like, you see, like, it makes people upset because it's like, I could see like the New York Times is leading people towards this conclusion.
To meeting with this intimacy coordinator. So she's putting forth all these sexy ideas that you didn't agree to. And that's not your job. It's not your job to meet with the intimacy coordinator offset. Like, you come up to work, you're not the director. Like, you are an actor. You show up and do your job. So much of what he said, especially about the intimacy coordinator, actually validates Blake's complaint. I don't know what people are talking about, like dead ass.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's okay. And by the way, the intimacy coordinator that she's quoting, I don't know if she saw her page, but this girl looks like, no offense, but like, she's kind of a freak. This isn't even like I don't know what she's talking about, but she's very, very, very left wing. Whatever. I'm not here to like. Oh, no sound. There was no sound. Oh, that's too bad. Is there sound now? Can you guys hear me? Oh, sorry. Everybody's like, there's no sound. There's no sound. I don't know. You can check her out. She's Perez Brenna. She looks like like I don't know. She's a very interesting person. I don't know her her vibe is weird. She's not somebody I would like take as like the intimacy coordinator of the year. She's like very political, very very out there. To each their own. Like I'm not, whatever. But my point is, that's not like a credible person. Like she's a one intimacy coordinator said one thing. Anyway, I just hope people go back to the New York Times article. That's the original crime scene. That's what needs to be like studied, because at the end of the day, to be honest with you, they're just going to say like, hey, we were just reporting on this complaint that was coming out. We knew what was coming out in it. I mean, we did report on the actual report, that came out. That's nothing nefarious. They're going to say it doesn't matter how long we were working with Lively because we published what was eventually filed. So just watch them when they do this and call them out and say like, this is not right behavior and you should be held accountable for it, even if it's just that people don't take you guys seriously anymore and they don't read your newspaper and instead they watch people like us. Because by the way, I also did a podcast about their podcast. I'm just kidding. I did an episode about the New York Times podcast, and they're basically just dripping with condescension on the public, on us, the people that they rely on, to make money. So anyway, please like and share, and I will try my best not to have technical difficulties next time I come on. But yeah, thank you guys for hanging out, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye. Oh, thanks, Dave Neal, for hanging out too. That was cool. I feel like there's a lot of really cool creators that are covering this fairly, and I appreciate that because this is just my little side hustle fun thing. So, all right. Catch you guys later. Happy Sunday.
She is fierce, cuts through the noise with words that pierce. It's not just wit, it's how you move. Every challenge fuels the groove. It's the rhythm of the bold, the beat of the free, the sound of ambition, the way it should be. Step by step, let the groove take control. Turn the highs and lows into pure gold. This is the show. This is the vibe. The Little Miss Jacob groove is alive. Bullies beware, she's calling it out. No room for doubt, she'll flip the whole route. This is the Little Miss Jacob show, where the real ones rise and the rest lay low.